Well, first of all, when I hear about 300 agencies in a coordination meeting, it makes me think some things haven't changed after all.
Some things never change. You're absolutely right.
Some things never change. There are some things changing. The private sector, I think, Neil, is one of the things that is changing. But some things are not changing, not just the coordination. For example, first world governments still have the money, and often the links and the experience. OECD countries represent over 80% of all the humanitarian aid. That hasn't changed. Now, what's changing is what they're doing with that money. They're not so much doing on the ground, pulling people out of rubble. They're more getting the money in, but they can do other things as well. For example, when you mentioned measles, when these countries go in, these international institutions, they have a different set of knowledge than local people. Now, these local people are doing all the work. They're doing all the important humanitarian work there. But these international institutions, perhaps like yours and other government agencies as well, they, for example, know that measles is a huge killer. The local people are probably not going to be well versed in this. And so they try to incorporate it into their guidelines. They try to do something about it on the ground. And that's a role that they can play besides just providing resources. And, these Western countries are still doing a lot in terms of trying to generate appeals, trying to generate attention for all these different crises that we're talking about. So earlier this week, I was at a conference on debt reduction, and Bill Clinton was a speaker there. Subject was debt reduction, and what did he talk about? Haiti. He talked about what he was doing in Haiti, how we need to reconstruct Haiti, the importance of Haiti, and he basically turned the conversation to Haiti and did a really important job there from the standpoint of how we think. And then he went back to debt reduction. But the Western media do pay too much attention to the international response. And then I think another thing that is changing is the whole idea of the private sector. I mean, there's much more partnerships today than there were years ago. Andrew Natsios was here at a previous panel. He's written an important article on this about public-private partnerships, how they're working, and that really is something that is changing. We heard about Google and Microsoft and using these high-definition satellite images. That was important in Haiti. They were basically providing high-definition images of damage in Port-au-Prince, and it really helped people coming in whenever they began relief and reconstruction. And both those companies, Google and Microsoft, have dedicated humanitarian information units. Now, sometimes, this private sector stuff takes interesting twists and turns, like the UPS situation that you mentioned. I remember during the Obama-McCain presidential campaign, McCain made the comment, if Walmart had gone in to New Orleans for Hurricane Katrina instead of FEMA, we wouldn't have had the problems that we had. And so you hear that kind of thing, and of course that's an exaggeration. One of the things I think is interesting in terms of change is that the range of activities in terms of emergency response, I think, is broadening. I wonder if you all see this as well. So, we've always had core responses: health services, medical services, water and sanitation, food, nutrition, shelter, and so forth. But now it seems like more things are being added. Education, agriculture, mental health support, income generation, human rights, advocacy. I mean, these kinds of things are basically add-ons that I don't think we saw so much a decade or 2 decades ago. And so I think those are all things that are changes. The private sector is much more involved today. This whole idea about technology and the cell phones we heard about. CARE in Peru, in the earthquake there, I think it was 07 or was it 06? 06. In the earthquake there, they actually set up a cell phone hotline where communities could respond to how the assistance was going on and complain about it if it wasn't taking place the way they wanted it. So, technology is important, but one of the things I think the colleagues that I talk to continue to stress is technology is important, technology is changing how we do things, but strategic leadership is still the core of what we need.
The thing, I think it's a consistent theme that technology is a tool, not the impact itself. But But there's no question about the fact that technology and the impact of technology is increasing the rate of change. And so, I'm going to ask the panelists to talk about what they think the near future is going to look like in 3 years. So, Father Carnes, the church has been at this for, what, a little over 2,000 years, so maybe 3 years is too short a time horizon, but if you think about the rate of change, maybe you could give us a window into how you think this conversation is going to change for the next 3 years.
Well, you know, it strikes me, on the one hand, some of the pieces that you mentioned at the end there, Bill, about addressing things like advocacy and some of the additional responsibilities they're now accruing to aid providers are something that the church has tried to do for a long time, with some success and some failures. But I think it's something we've had more and more attention on in recent years, and I think that that's what we would be looking to as our long-term goal in these situations, and really taking more of a back seat with those who are really the best first responders and maybe even some of the best coordinators on some of the long-term goals that we would have. The church will never probably have prime competency in terms of technological provision, nor should it. That's not its real task in the world. But the ability to accompany populations, to inspire trust and respect, hopefully, is something that the church can still do in so many communities. Often the church community is the place where people first go for help and then want to look to coordinate with others. So I think that's something that the church community will continue to do. And certainly in the goals for the Jesuit Refugee Service, as I was pointing out for Haiti, the goal there is a much longer term opportunity to do two things that didn't exist in Haiti before. One is to improve educational infrastructure. So the idea is, as we work and accompany communities on these more spiritual and social levels, can we also really improve the educational infrastructure? This is something that Jesuits have now a 450-year history in providing education. So can we work and expand? Before we had 3 educational centers in Haiti. The goal now, and they've identified 19 sites in which to build better educational centers. So that's one thing that we could do that didn't exist before, but could be long-term and project the country into the future. The other, which is really remarkable, is there's always been some animosity or difficulty, even in the church, coordinating between Dominicans and Haitians. And all of the planning in JRS right now in the Jesuit Refugee Service is joint planning. And they've actually formed a single committee between the two organizations to better coordinate aid, better coordinate thinking about long-term goals, better coordinate even personnel between the two countries. So there are opportunities in these disasters to actually build better aid infrastructure, if you will, as we rebuild the living infrastructure. And to return again, as I mentioned, you know, to have a clear exit strategy so we can go back to those things that we think we do best. Hopefully we'll learn some of the new technologies, but I think we'll keep looking to experts in those fields to do the things that they do better. You know, the church has always had this idea, I mean, going back literally millennia, of subsidiarity. This idea that the agents who are closest to the problem are the best ones to deal with that problem. And so if there are others that better deal with these things, we'd much rather see them doing it rather than trying to coordinate it from the top down. So I think that's something hopefully we can contribute into the future.